of a completion of a cycle. The 2022 Dimension Science Bridges program started 12 weeks ago in September. So we've been together with our scholars. We've been meeting them weekly for the past 12 weeks for group events, workshops, and training. Many of them are also committed to one-on-one mentoring with our coaching residents and mentors in residence. The program is called Bridges because it bridges the gap for scientists undergoing periods without salary. Yes, that can happen. Many times during transitions in career, scientists see themselves in a situation without salaries. For instance, when they are transitioning from a master's to a doctoral degree, or even after they graduate and then looking for jobs. Especially underrepresented communities of scientists are affected deeply by those gaps in income. So the program, Dimension Science create the Bridges programs to create, as the name say, a bridge on those times of gaps. And so I couldn't be more proud of our scholars for completing these 12 weeks and dedicating themselves. Not only they are already super busy with their careers and their research, and also dedicating themselves to this mentoring program. Thank you, everybody, for participating on that so actively and enriching our program so much as you did. When one of our advisors asks our scholars, what is the mission of this program? They answer, it is connecting us to networks and opportunities. And this event is one event that we're promoting that we want to create a network of scientists here in the US and Brazil. So you that are scientists in the US and listen to me today, you're going to meet many of the scientists doing research in Brazil. And I hope this will create a sense of collaboration and that also learning from each other how is doing science in different countries. And we may find out that is not that different. So I would like to thank our mentors and coaches and scientific advisors. I will tell you a little bit of the numbers of Dimension Sciences Bridges programs. We have 46 people involved in the program over these 12 weeks. They are like ad hoc advisors that help us to select our scholars, scientific advisors, scientific committee in residence, which accompany and evaluate our scholars during the 12 weeks, our coaching residents, our mentors in residence, and 15 speakers and senior professionals that dedicated their time in our workshops and training events. So thank you all for your volunteering time and for supporting our scientific community internationally. I would like to ask everybody, even though we're in the Zoom, to clap for our volunteers and for our scholars today. I will share quickly the agenda, and I'm already running over time, so we will get soon to the main feature of our event. So we will start with the first block of the event will be the pitch competition. Our 7 scholars and 2 guests will be delivering pitches, and all of them will be competing for a prize of $500. And I will tell more about the competition soon. We will then follow with a panel, a career panel, with our sponsors and partners, Women in Bio, and they will talk about exploring possibilities, how 4 women leverage their doctoral degrees in the biomedical enterprise. And then we will follow with the award ceremony, finding out who is the winner of the pitch competition and honorable benches. All of that is possible through support and donations from people like you. So I urge you guys to make a difference today. and help to support events like this. So before now, I went through the agenda, I want to give you a quick, before we start the pitch competition, and I will ask our scholars to start warming up their voices, and they will be giving 1-minute pitches soon. And we'll all be able to vote the best pitch, and I will explain the criteria soon. But before that, I would like to give a sense of how our mentoring sessions start. And I will invite our coaching residents, Shabnam Curtis, to join the podium with me. Hi, Shabnam.
Hi, Marcia. Hi, everyone.
So Shabnam will share, she will start the event. Many of our events start with a little bit of a live coaching session. So she'll give us a 5 minutes glimpse of her work with the scholars. Thank you, Shabnam, for joining us today.
Of course, it's an honor to be here. And yeah, thank you so much for that beautiful talk that you had, Marcia. I was thinking that this is an end. This is another beautiful end to this program this year. But it's also a beginning for many of you. And I hope it's a beautiful beginning for many of you. Or continuation, or, you know, just having more inspiration to just get moving with more motivation for the beautiful thing that every one of you is doing. I'm a certified life coach. For many years, I have worked as a program analyst with government contracts, basically under project management category, but life coaching is my passion and has been my passion for many, many years. So I decided to pursue it. I'm an integral coach, and that means I help my clients to integrate all different fragments of their life together. I do work based on neuroscience of coaching and change, which means I help the client to find the old patterns of living or habits that we have, to recognize those, to accept them, and then based on the neuroscience of change practices, we can create the new neuron paths and replace with the old ones, and have a more meaningful life, have a more peaceful life and more balanced life. Well, speaking of balance, that's what I like to do a little. That's what I like to talk a little bit today, to kind of like begin this beautiful program. You know, have you ever thought that like every day our brain helps us to remember that we need to sleep, we need to eat, we need to go to the bathroom, right? All those different biological needs that we have. Another thing that brain does for us is like budgeting for our emotions. There's a study research that is by Dr. Lisa Barrett. Sorry, I'm not good with names, but her book that is published, it's called How Emotions Are Made. She's a scientist like all of you. And what she has been working on and what she suggests through her study is our emotions are constructed by our own body and brain. Our body and brain are not separated. They are always working together. And our emotions are based on our perception, our experience of our life, the genetic that comes with us from the moment that we are born. So it's very important to understand that it's not the other person who is annoying me. Yes, the other person can have an annoying behavior, but the way that I take an action to it, very powerful or not really powerful, that's all constructed by my personal experience of life. Very simple example, I can just flight easily. I don't have a fear of flight, but I have a cousin, a first cousin, who as she enters the airplane, she starts crying because of the excess anxiety that she experiences. So how do we balance that anxiety, that all that emotions that we have through every day? We are emotional beings. We have cognitive intelligence, but that's not the whole thing. We are absolutely emotional beings. We go through emotions all day. And if we don't pay attention to them, if we don't do a good budgeting for them, then we feel burnt out in so many different ways. So budgeting, budgeting like finance budgeting, right? You wake up in the morning and you have some amount of budget that your brain calculates, and then depends on things that happen to you during the day, you use that budget. Your brain is calculating that, like, oh, this person actually had a personal attack on me, so I'm going to use a huge amount of that energy budget for this emotion that happened. And then later I'm playing with my little child and I'm taking energy, I'm replenishing. But how can we know that's balanced every day? That's the point, that we need to basically make that balance in a daily basis. Because especially, I think something common among all of you is you all have demanding works, demanding jobs. As scientists, you are always under pressure of academia. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of pressure. So are you paying attention to that body budget, that emotional body budget that you go through every day? Do you give yourself at the end of the day that, like, I'm emotionally exhausted, not bodily exhausted, I'm emotionally exhausted, what can I do for it? Lisa Barrett, the lady, the scientist who did the research, has pretty simple suggestions. If you can talk to a person who you feel safe about your emotions, the human to human connections, we are social animals, right? If you can, if you are a music person, if you are a walk person, if you can go to the nature, if you can play with your pet, if you have, I can see one of you has, like, I think Elena has like little plant right behind her. Little plants, like indoor plants can help a lot, because you have to take care of them and they give you a lot. Yeah, it is just like a little oxygen, and you think that, like, is like a little bit of freshing the air, but it's a lot more than that, because you connect with that emotionally. I want you to think about what you do at the end of each day, or even during the day, to replenish that energy, that emotional energy, to make that balance for yourself. Can you put a reminder for yourself during the day to just walk around, to do something that helps you to go back to the point of feeling refreshed with energy? Can you notice a strong, powerful stressors that could take a lot of energy, and you may need even more time to replenish? Can you do that? Can you think about it? And can you even, like, put reminder to do it? Well, I congratulate you all, and thank you so much for being with us in this beautiful journey. And I look forward to seeing you even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Shabnam.
Of course.
Well, I think now we're gonna move to, like, the exciting part of this event. One of the exciting parts of the event, which is the pitch competition with our scholars. So let me explain a little bit how it's going to work. So let me share here right after the 90 pitches that we're going to hear today. So start with Danilo Jobim, who is a master in science.
Hello, good night, everyone. You can say start when I'm ready. Oh, you can say start if you want me to begin.
You can start.
Okay. Hi, my name is Danilo Jobim. I'm a PhD student finishing my thesis, and well, in 2019, the CDC estimated that 2.8 million people die every year due to resistant antibiotic resistance infections. The correct diagnostic and fast resistance profiles are essential to save those people's lives. But the current methods to determine resistance require cell culture, which can take a critical amount of time. So my thesis goal is to try to establish a correlation between target genes antibiotic resistance in emerging bacterial pathogens, specifically in Corynebacterium styriatum, which is a bacteria from the human microbiota. By doing that, we can better predict resistance through genomic data and develop faster tools for diagnostics, which is the goal of my future postdoc. Thank you.
Thank you, Danilo. We're now going to hear from Eliana Monteiro, PhD.
Hello, everybody.
You can start.
Hello, I am Eliana Monteiro. My objective here was detecting the presence of the parasites from sample of kissing bugs and opossums that were collected in urban areas or close to the forest in São Paulo state cities. These animals could transmit the parasites that causes Chagas disease. We had this idea for the proposal because in the past, the occurrence of this disease was restricted to the rural areas, but nowadays, the kissing bug species have been migrated to urban areas. Another aggravating factor is that human beings are building their homes closer and closer to forest areas. The opossums dispersions occurs through the secretion of the scent gland. If the secretion reaches any poorly sanitized food or kitchen utensil, it may cause an accidental oral infection. I still don't have the complete data, but we are already finding positive samples. Thanks.
Thank you. We now, from Eliana, we will call Vicente Thiago. Oh, Vicente is not here yet, so we'll call Gibran da Silva, Master in Science.
Greetings, everyone. I am Gibran. I am a young Brazilian biologist. So I experienced expeditions in high productivity drylands from my region. However, those drylands are endangered with desertification and water depletion. Then I decided during my master's degree to evaluate the climate change effects on mammals from those drylands. I decided to work with mammals mainly because they have an important role in the ecosystem balancing, including the water cycle. I obtained information about the mammal's occurrence and combined it with multiple algorithms to create a list of species that can be extinct in the future. And I also mapped important results for biodiversity conservation. Those results can guide decision makers and scientists to know where, who, and what conserve first, and to mitigate climate change for future generations. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Gibran. I will call now Joelma Oliveira, Master in Science.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joelma Cruz, a PhD student in Engeneetring at São Paulo University. And my passion about plants started when I was a child. I used to help my family in the farm, and I wanted to understand how the plants work. This is why I became a biotechnologist. And this interest is guiding my research until today. Today, the biggest challenge in the world is increased food production to attend the demand for more 90 billion of people in 2050. 2050. And now I'm working in a lab that studies flower development. We want to understand the pistil development and consequently fruit formation. So we found SAI1. SAI1 is a gene that controls cell proliferation during flower development and is regulated by ABC model proteins and a lot of transcription factors of meristematic cells. So as a result, plant SAI1 knockdown have bigger pistil than wild type. In the future, we can produce bigger fruits. I'm talking about tomatoes, eggplants, and other fruits that will feed more people and help to solve the problem of increased food production. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joelma. Now, I want to call Gabriel Santos, PhD.
Hello, hi everybody. Well, my name is Gabriel Santos. I'm a postdoc here in Brazil in the National Institute of Atlantic Forests, where I work on the conservation of biodiversity and natural research. As you know, human activities are pushing biodiversity to the edge, and ultimately it affects the human health. Unfortunately, the investments are often insufficient, particularly in countries like Brazil that have low investments in science technology. Thus, my current project here is identifying gaps of knowledge and investment to monitor the effectiveness of conservation protected areas and wildlife populations, as well as developing cheaper tools to make these tasks easier. For example, one of my current projects does find some kind of this situation here. That's well-structured protected areas already have that's receiving more attention from science, politicians, and general public. Meanwhile, protected areas without sufficient infrastructure are neglected. These are kind of bias that you can find, for example, in the software that I'm developing and I'm sharing the chats. And this is a kind of situation that needs to be actively changed. So I hope you enjoy the software, and I'm lovely to ask any question that you may have. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gabriel. So we are now going to call Elina Santos, PhD. Is Elina here?
Hello. Yes. Hi, I am Allam, PhD in Environmental Science and Technology from FGD in Dourados. I work in the area of environmental mutagenesis, ecotoxicology studies, and toxicity tests in Aedes aegypti. Due to spread of disease transmitted by Aedes aegypti, I developed a larvicide to control this vector. This larvicide comes from an agro-industrial quinoa technocational nutshell liquid. During the programming, the larvicide has improved and will be inserted into conventional detergent. The idea is to obtain a low-cost biolarvicide detergent for use by the population. As I was left with a scholarship after defending my doctoral thesis, the DSS Bridges program provided the continuity of this project in the last quarter of 2022. Favor developing of this product that will be of great importance to population in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Elina. Now I would like to call Sheila da Silva, PhD.
Hello, acho que foi. Hello, my name is Sheila. I am a biologist and PhD student at UFRG. I have been working for 7 years searching for antimicrobial substances to control resistant bacteria. Everyone has at some times experienced disease caused by bacteria and the need to take the correct antibiotics to get better. In some cases, doctors increase the dose or change the medication to obtain success. But in other cases, doctors are not success, and in the world, 700,000 people die from infections caused by bacterial resistance. This is the great importance of my work. I look for alternatives to kill these resistant bacteria through metagenomic studies and detection of the production of these substances in bacteria isolated from fish. I can make a new antibiotic for use in the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. So this is Sheila Silva, PhD. And I will call now Amanda Santos, Master in Science.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda. I am a PhD candidate in ecology, and in my doctorate research, I have been trying to unravel the effects of an uncommon interaction between monkeys and an endangered palm in a Brazilian Atlantic forest. Monkeys predate on palm heart and kill these palms, but these palms have the potential to attract fruit-eating animals that are also responsible for transporting seeds in the forest. So the disappearance of the palms might affect which species will grow in the forest. And in a long term, this interaction can change the face of the forest, leading to a series of cascading effects and compromising biodiversity in Atlantic forest. That is a biome already considered a hotspot of biodiversity, and that already loses nearly 80% of its original area. Thus, this unexpected interaction is another symptom of a biodiversity crisis and offers risks to a threatened species, a threatened biome, and to the population that is directly dependent on ecosystem services provided by Atlantic forests. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And then vote on your favorite pitch today based on the criteria, simple and compelling. I won't vote because I think all of them are compelling and simple, and I would vote for all of them, I think, if I had to vote. But I'm really excited with this. Independent of the result, I want to say that all of you did an amazing job during the program. And it's amazing the level of commitment of these scientists, not only to the research they're doing, but also with like this professional development and enrichment that they are doing in their lives. So you inspiring so many scientists already out there, and inspiring all the mission sciences volunteers as well. So I think now we're going to move to the next part of our event. And I would like to invite quickly here one of our volunteers, Asha, Allam, and we will be.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Marcia. So my name is Asha Allam. I'm a non-scientist. I'm a product safety and intellectual property attorney, but I'm a volunteer content writer for Dimension Sciences. And I want to congratulate all of the DS Bridges scholars on your amazing pitches. I know you've had multiple communications trainings, and I hope that they've helped you find your voice and communicate your science more effectively. As the DS Bridges program comes to a close, Dimension Sciences has one more opportunity to offer you to volunteer as a content writer and get more experience and exposure with creative writing. Now, you might be asking, you're used to technical writing, why are we talking about creative writing? Now, creative writing is not just for fiction. We live in a 24-hour news cycle, and creative writing is how you stand out. A good presentation will draw your audience in, inform them about your science, and then persuade them to do something. Think back to those first iPhone commercials. They didn't just tell you about technical specs. And so, your science, your brilliant, hard-earned conclusions, your science is amplified with creative writing that gets people to pay attention so that you can deliver your message in a way that allows them to learn what you're trying to do and then convinces them to take action, whether that's donating to causes that support you, whether that means giving a grant to you, whether that means hiring you for a job. Creative writing is a way to practice that. Now, knowledge is a process, not a goal, and it requires practice. So we're asking you all to join us, whether it's as a one-time volunteer or a regular Dimension Sciences content writing volunteer, to contribute very short pieces on any range of topics that you find interesting. Your contribution helps Dimension Sciences not only elevate science and research, but it also supports diversity and inclusion, because the more diverse voices we have, the better we can show how important these voices are in STEM fields. But it also, for you, gives you an opportunity to get feedback on your writing. You get promoted, with your name in our network on social media and our subscribers. And it gives you an outlet for curiosity. You get to do research on things that, maybe you don't get time to do in your, in your normal research. So if you're interested, please email the content writing team, and I'll drop the email address in the chat afterwards, but it's communications@dimensonsciences.org. Now with that, I will introduce Rachel Fleck. She's a Dimension Sciences board member, and she's a longtime supporter of STEM research. She's currently a senior vice president for Pinnacle Financial Partners, and she prides herself in her ability to cultivate strong relationships with clients and centers of influence across various industries. I had the pleasure of speaking with her at length last year to talk about how she got involved with Dimension Sciences even before she became a board member. And it was really interesting to hear how she, being in the financial world, uses her position and platform to find opportunities to elevate minorities and women in business and in science, and how she has really tried to connect those two fields by using a lot of the philanthropic opportunities her clients are seeking with the causes that she cares about. And so I'm really glad to see that she's joined Dimension Sciences as a board member, and I'm sure she's going to be moderating a wonderful panel for you all. So I hope I didn't go over my 2 minutes. Thank you, Marcia, and I'll turn that over to you, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Asha.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you so much. Yes, I think you kind of stole my my introduction here a little bit. So hopefully I'm not talking over again what you just mentioned. But thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. Again, my name is Rachel Fleck. I'm originally from Curitiba, Brazil, and I live here in the US in Washington, D.C. Like Asha mentioned, I am a banker, but I promise you I'm not in the wrong Zoom meeting, okay? I'm meant to be here. I was lucky enough to be part of Dimension Sciences' first meeting back in 2019. Since then, I took more of an active role as a board member, and my role here is to make sure that this program continues to live its mission, which is assisting early career scientists from underrepresented communities through mentoring programs and scholarships to promote diversity in the sciences, to further equity, international collaboration, and innovative research. Why is this cause so important to me? Well, I remember when I was 18 years old and I came to America with my mom. It was just my mom and I. And I had big aspirations. I want to go to school. I want to go to college, but we didn't have the money. So I had to work 2 jobs to be able to just attend 1 or 2 classes. Well, Dimension Sciences' goal is to provide scholarships to researchers and scholars just like yourself. This is where you come in. You can change the world and we can help. Right now, I would like for you to stop what you're doing. And on the chat box, you will see a link. Please take the time today to donate to Dimension Sciences so that we can continue to provide scholarships to people just like you. Remember, we'll take anything. A little bit goes a long way. And our goal is to continue to help all of you. So while you're doing that, while you're donating to Dimension Sciences, I want to tell you about our annual anniversary gala. It's our big annual celebration. It's something we have every year, and I want to invite you to join us on the 19th at it's going to be at 6 p.m. here in Washington, D.C., 8 o'clock at night in Brasilia time. So please join us for the gala. We love to see you over there as well. And thank you so much. I love hearing from all of you, and I'm excited to see who the winner is going to be.
are you there?
I am there. Thank you, Marcia. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Stephanie Davis. I am a pharmacologist by training. For my day job, I am a program officer at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute in the National Institutes of Health. And when I am not working on my day job, I serve as the chair for the Capital Region chapter of Women in Bio. So without going into too much detail, Women in Bio is a nonprofit organization that has been around for about 20 years. We consist of 14 chapters across the US and Canada, and we consist of over 3,000 different members. So the Capital Region chapter specifically consists of about 350 members in all sectors of the life sciences field in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. So we are very, very excited to be a part of the Dimension Sciences event tonight. And I wanted to introduce you all to my friends and colleagues. These are amazing, intelligent, and interesting women, and it's going to be a real treat to hear from them tonight. But so the title of this panel is called Exploring the Possibilities, How 4 Women Leveraged Their Doctoral Degrees in the Biomedical Enterprise. So those of you who have seen the website for the event have probably seen the full biographies. For the sake of time, I encourage you to check out our speakers' full credentials. But before they introduce themselves, I just wanted to briefly go over who's you're going to be hearing from tonight. First is Dr. Maria Carranza, who is a program officer at the National Institute on Aging. Next, you will hear from Dr. Shay Cohen, who is a health science officer in the VA Office of Research and Development. The third person you're going to hear from is Dr. Gisela Andrea Camacho Hernandez, who is an IRTA postdoctoral fellow at the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And finally, you'll hear from Dr. Sarah Phillips, who is a postdoctoral scholar in the Center for Brain Plasticity and Recovery at Georgetown University. So I feel like we should start by going alphabetical order. Maria, would you like to tell us about yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Carranza, and thank you, Stephanie, for the kind introduction, and thank you to Marcia for the kind invitation. I grew up in Guatemala, and I actually went to college there, and I did my bachelor's in pharmaceutical sciences. And after working a couple of years in a pharmaceutical production plant in Guatemala, I was curious and I wanted to learn more about the mechanisms behind the drugs, which had always interested me since childhood. So after a number of very unique opportunities, I was able to apply for and be accepted to do a PhD here in the United States. And I came 20 years ago this year. So I was able to conduct a PhD in medicinal organic chemistry, actually synthesizing potential drug candidates for central nervous system disorders and cancer. So I obtained my PhD in chemistry, and after that, I had the opportunity to move to California and pursue postdoctoral studies at a research institute focused on cancer. And then the opportunity came for me to apply to be a professor. And I became a professor at a small undergraduate institution. And I was a professor for more than 10 years, teaching chemistry and conducting undergraduate research with students and helping them get on the right path to pursue their own goals. And that was extremely gratifying. But after more than 10 years, again, my curiosity, which I'm sure I share with all of you, led me to find out about a fellowship that would lead me to the government to understand, who makes the rules about grants and, where all of this comes from and how does the government, the US government decide to use its funds in order to conduct research, both here in the United States and also abroad. So I was lucky to be selected and to do a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship, which led me to an institution called the National Science Foundation here in the US, which is one of the most important funders of science, of basic science in the United States and the world. So that was a transformative experience where I got to use every day my experience both as an educator and as a scientist, a chemist by training. And it led me to understand, the work that program officers do in being administrators of these government funds, and who get to, make decisions about who gets funded to do research. So that led me to my new position, which is as a program officer in the National Institute on Aging, part of the National Institutes of Health. And I have been in this position for about 2 years. So I guess the message that I want to leave you with is that your curiosity that you have now will take you many places, and that it is perfectly okay to have 1, 2, even 3 careers in your lifetime. It's okay to pursue your passions. It's okay to pursue your questions, and you will have a bright future wherever you decide to go. And being prepared as a scientist really does prepare you for any path that you would like to take. And with that, I will yield the floor to my next colleague. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Next up, we have Dr. Shay Cohen.
Hello, everyone, and congratulations. I know this is a very exciting time. I remember being in your spot many years ago, not that many years ago. I got my PhD in 2017. Well, my story is a little different. I didn't go straight to grad school after graduating from undergrad. I kind of took some time off. I'm trying to see what I want to do, trying to go around having a biology degree without going back to grad school, which it failed. So I had some unique experiences though, but I'm originally from Spartanburg, South Carolina. I apologize. I know many of you may not know where that is, but it's in the south of the United States. And I went to the University of South Carolina, took some years off, as I stated, and went back to grad school. And I pursued a PhD in biomedical sciences with an emphasis on cancer research. So I initially went to school with the mindset of, oh, I'm gonna get the Nobel Prize for curing cancer. But then when I got to school and realized that there was a fleeting task, I said, oh, I'm not gonna try to pursue that anymore because cancer research is very saturated. But I also wanted to kind of create a niche for myself. So I started volunteering for a student-ran nonprofit organization. It was called HSAT, Health Students Taking Action Together. And really what this organization did was trying to raise awareness about health disparities in the Atlanta, Georgia area, which is where I went to grad school. And I led a outreach program that went into barbershops to take blood pressure of African-American men to raise awareness about uncontrolled hypertension in that cohort. And it really got me just interested in wanting to pursue policy. So after graduate school, I tried to get a job. Then I got a couple of positions. Then I went into postdoc, and then I applied for the AAAS fellowship, which landed me in the government at the VA. So initially I was helping to write policies for this genetic research program to increase diversity and open up access. And then I just kind of wanted to know what else could I do? What other skills did I had that can be transferable to another role? So I applied for a position as a health science officer. So the VA is different. Not the many of the panelists here are from the NIH, but the VA is different in that we have a dual role of being a scientific review officer and a program manager of those projects. And I really was interested in that role. I applied, and luckily I was selected. So what I do is I oversee review panels that vote or score applications to be funded. After the application is funded, then I go to, I also manage those applications. So if a PI wants to change anyone on the application, like they want to add someone, if they want to change the project a little, if they want more money, I have to approve their request. And I also make recommendations to the directors who are in charge of those final approvals. So I really like my job. It gives me a lot of autonomy. It allows me to stay in research, which is something I was really interested in doing. And currently I have 3 portfolios: pulmonary medicine, which is like, of course, the lung. I have preclinical mental health and behavioral sciences, as well as Gulf War illnesses. So I really enjoy what I do. Day to day is just different. In addition to my role with the VA as a health science officer, I'm also co-chair of a diversity, equity, and inclusion work group. So basically, I oversee the initiatives and activities of VA's pursuit to be more inclusive and diverse, of research scientists, of broadening access to students like you who are interested in coming to the VA to do research. So I help oversee that program, make sure we're getting the funding, make sure that the sites who are hosting the students have everything they need. I'm actually going to Charleston, which is our main site, in January, to kind of talk about next year's budgeting. We help basically get more money so more students can come in. So I'm really proud of all of you and the accomplishments. I love hearing the pitches. I'm looking forward to seeing who's win, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shay. Next up, we've got Dr. Camacho Hernandez.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction and the invitation. As mentioned, my name is Gisela Camacho, and I am a medicinal chemist by training. I actually was born and raised in Mexico, and I did my college degree like Maria in my country as well. And then I came to the US in a combined program between my home institution in Tijuana and the University of California in San Diego, which is kind of like across the border from where I was born and raised. So it was kind of like an interesting experience there. After I completed my degree there, I actually moved to Baltimore. And I am currently a postdoctoral fellow at the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And compared to Maria and Shay, I actually still do bench work, which means that I'm still in the path of continuing doing bench research. I basically do chemistry every day and test the compounds that I design and synthesize in the lab. So I'm still in that role. As I mentioned, I was born and raised in Mexico, so I actually moved to Baltimore right before COVID. So that was also an additional adding to the whole experience to try to adjust to a new place, and the whole pandemic that we all went through as well. So my current work, we work primarily on targets that are related to substance use disorders, but they are also related to, as we know or may know, a lot of substance use disorders has comorbidity with neuropsychiatric disorders as well. So we try to do research, try to develop compounds and new therapeutics potentially, or tools, which I've been also working fluorescent tools in the lab. What else can I say about me? I am very happy to be here and hearing about all of you, and I hope that as I can share my experience with you, hear about also your experiences, your pitches and everything. It's been super nice. And yeah, I will let my next colleague talk about her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Giselle. And last but not least, Dr. Sarah Phillips.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. Again, my name is Sarah Phillips. It's funny because I think I might be the most different in that I study science in vivo or in living, but I'm actually very similar to Shay in that I also identify as a Black person, a Black woman in particular. I'm also Asian American, so my mother is Korean, my dad is Black. So my mom came from Korea to the United States when she married my father. And my early experiences growing up bilingual is a big part of the reason why I do the research that I do today. So I actually started out as a linguist. I'm a linguist first, neuroscientist second. I went to study, I did my undergraduate studies at the University of Georgia. even though I grew up in the Carolinas as well. There, I switched actually from chemistry to linguistics. I went from the scientific study of chemicals to the scientific study of language. From there, I actually took a detour and worked for a publishing company for a few years before returning to graduate school. And that was, I think, pivotal for me in figuring out what is the kind of research that I wanted to do, and focusing specifically on language in the mind. And that's where I also figured out there were other people who were doing this kind of work, but not necessarily with the same experiences and perspective that I have on how language functions in the mind. So for that reason, I went back to school. I got my master's when I was still living in LA, working for the publisher, and then went on to do my PhD at New York University, where I was in the linguistics department, but that's where I received my training as a neurolinguist. So I would do research looking at how bilinguals are able to process across both of their languages using brain imaging techniques, in particular magnetoencephalography, or MEG for short. And that technique allows us to see where things happen with temporal accuracy. So we can see when the brain and when certain regions of the brain are particularly active for specific language functions, millisecond by millisecond. And that's where I also realized that I still wanted more training, especially since MEG is a very niche and specific type of technique. And so I'm currently now doing my postdoctoral research at Georgetown University Medical Center in the Center for Brain Plasticity and Recovery, where I'm training on how to do fMRI specifically, but I'm also doing some structural MRI. And the goal is to not only understand how our brains are able to process language, but also how do we learn languages? So what are the mechanisms that help support language learning, as well as allow us to then become highly functioning? I'm also now gaining clinical experiences. So my foray into clinical research is new in my current position, where I'm starting to understand what happens when people suffer traumatic brain injury. So suffering from things like stroke, or maybe neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, how those kinds of traumas or diseases can actually also impair language function. And so the idea is to better understanding the mechanisms that support healthy language use, but then also understanding if things go wrong, what are some things that we can do to develop clinical strategies to help recover language use and language function, and help people return back to their normal daily lives, or at least something closer to their normal daily lives. So that's it for me. And thank you again so much. And I'll go ahead and yield the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phillips. Okay, so now is our time for Q&A from the audience, but I wanted to just start us off with a few questions. So I have a question, and this is directed at all of the speakers, so please feel free to jump in when you feel inspired. So obviously, as all of you have PhDs, you have all gone to grad school, and you have touched on your experiences in grad school. As you all probably know way too well, graduate school can be mentally and emotionally taxing. So what is one habit or practice that you got into while in grad school that you used for self-care and to manage your stress? And if so, do you still use it today?
I'll start because grad school probably is the most recent for me. I defended in June, so I'm a brand new PhD in that sense. I might be the newest out of the four of us. But I would say the biggest thing for me was actually developing really good eating and exercise habits. So that's the first and foremost. And that's because, one, I realized that I was sitting for long periods of time, which I wasn't used to doing. So whether I was sitting in front of my computer, writing, or doing experimental design, or going into the lab, I'm not a bench scientist, but I do sit in a lab, but I just sit behind a very big fancy machine instead of at a bench. But it involves a lot of sitting, and that's not good for the body. And anything that's not good for the body usually is not good for the mind either. So making sure that I started a regular exercise routine, doing things like yoga, running. I saw my advisor actually also continue those running habits. That helped keep me not only mentally and physically feeling good, but it also gave me the energy and the dexterity to make it through the day, because sometimes days were long. The other thing was actually having support. So whether that was getting therapy, having a support network, both inside and outside of academia, these were huge. So having a friends group who didn't know anything that I was doing to check me when I was like doing something that might seem unrealistic, having friends inside academia who could really understand where I was coming from and can support me mentally and emotionally. But above all else, therapy. And that's just because, you know, when you're in graduate school, real life still happens. You're still a person. I lost my father. I lost my grandparents. I was dealing with a lot of grief during my PhD, losing so many people in a very short period of time. And therapy helped me not only grieve, but also helped me stay motivated through the PhD, because there were definitely times where I wanted to give up. So yeah, those were my strategies.
Wonderful, Sarah. And I have to say, thumbs up for therapy. That was definitely a huge help for me in grad school and today as well. Does anyone else have any healthy habits that they like to share for managing stress?
This is Shay. So I forgot, I didn't mention my school, Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia is the school I attended. Similar to Sarah, I did some of the same things, the working out, because working out, I still do that today to release stress. So that really helps. Also eating better, just not filling up on the sugar that you think is making you stay awake, or the coffee. It never did that for me. So I don't know, I just never had that habit. Also therapy, luckily for us, we had 2 on-site therapists because it was free. I went to a medical school for my grad degree. So I was lucky in that we didn't have to pay for therapy. And I was able to go and see my therapist and really talk out things that may have been impacting me from like my personal life, and it was spilling over to like school, right? Like mindset or just things I was going through personally. So that really helped. Also, like I said, I stayed out of school a while before going back to grad school. And what I realized is that I tried to, when I initially went, I studied so much to kind of make up for being out of school. And my brain was just like overworked. When I got into the lab, I was just like, oh, I was over ambitious, but I realized I would just like, you know, at the end of the day, I just didn't have any energy. So what I started doing is just taking more time to do things I really enjoy. When I had exams the night before, I would have a time to cut out for studying. And then the next day I would do something really fun. Or when I started being in the lab doing research, because you can get really involved and go down, just like spiral and go down a rabbit hole, regardless of like if you're doing experiments or you're researching something. So I just found ways to take time out for me. So I would have set aside days that I would do things for me, because sometimes you have to go into the lab on the weekends. And that really helped me kind of have a balance, because you're in grad school, but you're also living. And you have to make sure that grad school is not all that you're doing. So those are things that help me.
Completely agree with that, Shay. Grad school is very time consuming, but it cannot be your whole life. That's not sustainable and that's not healthy. So I have another question, and this is directed at all of you. So if you could go back to yourself as you were just starting your grad program and give your first year PhD student self one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
I will go this one. For me will be, do not overthink. It happened to me so many times, even like, taking classes or whatever, that I needed to send something and I was just overthinking whether it was, it was right. And I ended up always sending the first thing that I had it ready but I spend like 2 hours overthinking and how to move it and correct it. And that brings me to the next one, which is, it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to let things go, and you're training. So you're learning, you're in a learning process, and be kind to yourself that, you know, while you're in that journeying process, you're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. That it's part of how you actually learn. So I think those things are the things that I will say. Do not overthink. It's okay to be perfect, and be kind to yourself.
I guess I would like to piggyback on what Gisela just said. I agree with her completely. And yes, you know, one thing that happens to you when you're in grad school is that you think you're supposed to know everything, right? You know, and you think you're the only one, right? So instead of, you know, acknowledging that you're there to learn, you think that you have to know everything, and that puts a lot of pressure on all of us. And you know, that's normal, but you're not alone. So one thing that I wish I could have done, you know, is to surround myself with probably more mentors, you know, more mentors in different spheres, you know, not just my, you know, advisor, but also other people. And you know, this you know, can be easier for some than others. Maybe some people are more available, and certainly nowadays it is a lot more common, and there's a lot more willingness, you know, probably from people to be your non-official mentors, you know, and really lend you a hand when you need to get unstuck, you know, like Gisela very well said, you know. So it's normal to get stuck, to overthink, to feel the pressure, and but you're not alone. So finding those people that will help you get out of that hole and keep going is crucial, I would say.
Wonderful. Well, Maria, I'm glad you brought up mentors, because that brings me to my next question. And I realize that I'm asking a lot of questions. So if anyone in the audience has a question for our speakers, please put it in the Q&A function and we will get to it. But I wanted to bring up specifically on mentors. Many students, when they are going into their PhD programs, they think that their PhD advisor and your mentor have to be the same person. But obviously this isn't always true. So I wanted to hear from you all. Did you have a mentor figure who was not your advisor during your scientific career? And if so, how did you end up finding them?
Ooh, I'll start with this one. I like to affectionately call my mentor team as my Holy Trinity, because at the pinnacle was my advisor. I was very fortunate that my PhD advisor was someone, and is still someone, who motivated me to be a better scientist, but also to be a better researcher, to be a better academic, but also to be a better public intellectual. And so I definitely learned a lot about what does it mean to do good research? What does it mean to do ethical research? How to, you know, think about grants and getting funding, and some of the nuances that come with being a professional academic. But, you know, she's been further along in her career. She's also Finnish, even though she's been in the United States a long time. You know, while we could get on the same page about what does it mean to be a woman in academia, it was hard for her to understand what it means to be a Black woman in academia, or a Black and Asian American woman in academia. And especially as someone who's grown up in the United States and having a very different perspective of the US than she does. And so another person who was in my Holy Trinity was a faculty member who was the one faculty of color in my department, but she also happened to be Afro-Latina. And I got to work with her in many capacities to not only be aware of what opportunities and hardships I would have as a professional academic, but I got to work with her and learn a different type of teaching strategy, which allowed for me to not only, I think, impart the knowledge and experiences that I have as someone who is not white and who is female, but I was also able to then be receptive to people who were from all walks of life and figure out a different way of teaching than what was traditionally taught. And that's because it didn't work for me and it didn't work for her whenever I was starting to teach. And I thought that was really important. And then the third person was actually someone who is junior faculty. She is someone who was newly coming into being a professor and also at a very different stage of her career. And so she was learning how to build her lab and become a PI and learn what that meant. And so I got to see what that would look like for me. Is this something I really want to do for the rest of my life? Is it not what I want to do for the rest of my life? And if it is, what are some things that I can learn from her to better prepare myself as I transition out of my PhD and move onward and upward? And so I was very blessed to have what I like to call my Holy Trinity. And those are specifically faculty mentors, but I also had graduate student mentors. So these were people who were 2, 3, 4 years ahead of me in my own specific program. Some were in the same subfield that I was in, some are not. So some were theoretical linguists. Others were also neurolinguists. And then also some were in the psychology department doing, neuroscience as well. And in doing that, I was able to learn a lot of things hands-on with those people. So my faculty advisor and the other faculty mentors were not going to help me when I had a stats problem or help me when I hit a roadblock with my experimental design. It was these, mentors who were further along in their PhD process who were able to then really coach me in some of those more technical and nuanced aspects of what I was doing. And so I think of having a mentorship community from my PhD, and that, luckily has carried on into my postdoc since I'm still in communication with all of these people today.
Wonderful, Sarah. So glad to hear about all these people who've really helped be invested in your success and have helped contribute to that as well. Does anyone else want to share any of their mentoring experiences? Okay, so I figured we can move on. I'm not seeing any chat questions or those in the Q&A section. So I figured we'll go on to the next question. So I have a question specifically for Shay and Maria. So as my fellow government employees on the panel, we are very familiar with the term of soft or or transferable skills, sorry, non-technical or transferable skills. So, when you moved from the bench to a non-academic scientific career, what would you say were the top 3 most important skills that you use in your current role, and why?
Okay, I will go first. That's a great question. I would say for me, communication, leadership, and problem solving. So when you're in academia, of course, you're writing a lot of technical verbiage, and a lot of times it didn't make sense to me. I was like, why do we have to use these complicated words? To me, it's something simple. So now I can't even communicate with people without doing it. So I've flipped because it's so much ingrained. But communication skills is really vital for my current role. I just actually oversaw 3 review panels. And even though I cannot actively participate in the evaluation of the applications, I'm responsible for getting together the summary statements. So these are the statements that go out to the reviewers, whether they are funded or not, that are it summarizes what was discussed on their application. Areas of weaknesses, areas of strengths, recommendations, red flags, whatever the case may be. So I have to go in, and even though these are highly experienced investigators who are drafting these summary statements, oftentimes we have to do a lot of editing. So I have to make sure that I go through every summary statement. So one of my panels, we had like over 20 applicants. I had to go through each of those summary statements with me and another colleague and take out any verbiage that may seem biased, like I feel this, right? Or take out misspelled word, make sure it was grammatically correct. And also that it read as like from a scientist, right? Because even though you have people who are in the sciences, some people just are not as involved in these summary statements. Also, when I'm writing to my reviewers when I'm recruiting them. I have to make sure that I'm adequately, stating what I want. It takes a long time sometimes to write an email. So just be mindful, like it's not as easy as you think. So writing is very important. So also verbal, like when I'm speaking with the investigators. Today I had a meeting with an investigator who she submitted a letter of intent, which is basically something they have to submit to be approved in order for their applications to be submitted. And I had to verbalize what areas in her letter of intent needed improvement. So those are something that really kind of I've been able to enhance, and being a fellow really helped me do that. Also leadership skills. I'm able to like motivate some of these applicants that come in and they want to know, how can I be competitive for an award? Also building relationships, that's very important, building relationships with people, not just within my office, but also outside of my office, because we work collaboratively with different agencies and different stakeholders outside of the government. So building those relationships, being adaptable. We're actually going through a reorganization now with with the VA. So my job, not title, but my job tasks may change. So being adaptable. Also problem solving. That's one of the huge things, which I'm sure most of us do, is being scientists. We solve problems. We want to implement solutions. So I'm trying to be a problem solver for different areas in my office. So those are like the 3 skills that I believe that, that are transferable, that I've adapted my current role.
I would agree with Shay in 100% in all of her points. I guess I will add a few more things. What I didn't get to mention in the introduction is the type of program officer that I am, the type of work that I do. And, because of my background in education and at the National Science Foundation Education Directorate, I am now a training and career development program officer, which means that I get to work with individuals just like you, who are doing their PhDs, who are doing their postdocs, or are early career investigators, looking to get grants and funding for their research. So the first thing I would say is people skills, right? So you really have to, you cannot go anywhere, believe me, even though you might think that your number one job is, at the bench in science and so forth, but you have to communicate it as Shay said, and you really have to interact well with a lot of different people and at different stages in their own careers. So people skills are really important. As Shay mentioned, I would say flexibility. As scientists, we are flexible. We pivot quickly, and that's actually a great transferable skill that you will take in anything that you decide to do. And then also your ability to learn. We're quick learners, so we learn quickly. If there's something a scientist knows how to do, is we know how to learn. So there will be many times, things that we have to catch up on, and that we need to, sometimes even teach ourselves or ask help, to be taught something. But we definitely so we definitely have that ability, and it stays with you for your whole life. So rely on that. I'm sure that you will use it a lot. Yeah, so those are my 3 nuggets. Thank you, Steph.
Of course, Maria. And so there is a question in the chat from one of our scholars, and this actually aligns well with a question that I wanted to direct towards our immigrant speakers specifically. So the question in the chat is, I know that there are foreign researchers here who have lived in the US for years. So I would like to know what it's like to do research in the US as a foreigner. And this question also applies to Marcia as well as our panelists.
So I can jump
I'll
in.
delegate to our panelists today.
No worries.
I can jump in. So for me, the first thing I actually started doing research when I was an undergrad in Mexico. And when I came to the US for the first time, it was actually a summer internship. Well, the first thing was I was amazed about, all the resources that we have limitations in where I was from, So that experience made me value a lot all the resources that we had in UCSD, and from actually access to research literature. I mean, something so basic that sometimes we take for granted. And that was a big motivation for me in many ways, you know, to work hard and to actually use the resources that I have to do, or to try at least to do good science. I had the beautiful opportunity to be in a lab where it was very diverse. So there was a lot of people from I will say from a lot of places of the world. There was an adjunct professor that was part of the group that was from Croatia. When I joined, there was a girl from Italy. There were other people from Mexico as well there. I mean, there was, you know, languages, you can hear Italian here. And I mean, it was just super nice, you know, people from China as well. So I had the fortunate to land in a place where I feel comfortable to navigate into kind of like, because, you know, sometimes we don't see the difficulty of transitioning from our science and our native language to English. So for me to have a place where I felt safe of not being a native English speaker was very nice. And I felt comfortable even when I didn't knew the word that I wanted to say, you know, to just ask. So in that sense, I think, and that is why I push a lot to a diverse environment, because it just makes it much more welcome for everyone. And regardless of your background, you know, just go to a place where it's very diverse. You can really feel comfortable being who you are and, you know, just sharing who you are. So for me, it has been a great experience. To come here and to feel safe. And I actually, one of the best experience that one of the first great experience that I had, it was actually when I gave my first English presentation in a conference. I was very nervous, and I remember I actually half remember the presentation because it was so much adrenaline that I was just talking through it, trying to communicate. My science and English for me was a big thing at the beginning, especially. So I just remember my advisor in front of me sitting, and he was with a smile, you know, and I felt supported. I think I did very badly, although he said, you did fantastic, you did great, which I'm not saying he was lying, but even that level of support, even those small words, you know, to say to someone that it's trying hard, was something that gave me a lot of confidence to continue pushing myself through my PhD, and that is something that was very important for me, and that I still have a lot of contact with him, and I'm still very thankful for that. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gisela. So I have a question specifically for Sarah and Shay. So as our Black women in STEM on the panel, one thing that struck me when you all were talking about your backgrounds is that, Sarah, you got your PhD from NYU, and Shay, you got your PhD from Morehouse. So as two scientists who both got your degrees, one at an HBCU, one at a PWI, I wanted to hear, you know, how do you think that significantly affected your experience during your education? And do you think that if you had gone to a completely different institution, would that have significantly altered your time as a doctoral student?
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Mine would be brief. It's funny because I went to a PWI for my undergrad, so I wanted to go to a HBCU for grad. So I specifically chose HBCU. And the reason why, I went to a law school, and I just kind of felt like there was not a lot of catering for, you know, diversity, and there was a time where it wasn't really talked about as much. But I kind of felt isolated, and I was just another student going to class, and I was kind of treated the same. So I just didn't feel, I don't know, just felt not as valued. So I chose HBCU that was smaller, so I can kind of build relationships and grow our community, because I didn't really talk to many people in school. People went to school and they left. I mean, went to class and left. So I really was just like focused. I would say the difficulties of pursuing my degree, even though I went to a HBCU, graduate school is just a whole nother phenomenon when it comes to your experience, and everyone has different experience. I would say I felt devalued a little by my advisor. I had a male advisor, and it was a cultural difference. So he actually was from Africa. And at the time, I didn't realize just the difference in how the male and female dynamics was. And so oftentimes I felt like while I couldn't say things, he would sometimes not respond to me, and I may need him for something, and he wouldn't even respond to emails. He would be in his office all day, not come out. And also I remember one time I went into his office to kind of, we were discussing my project, and he just kept comparing me to my other lab mate, and was like, oh, you're not as such and such as her. You're not as, your work is not as has as much quality as hers. And it really did something to me. I almost left grad school a few times, and that was why it was good to have counseling. And it was a mess. We had to end up going before the dean and kind of get it situated. But I also felt a little isolated because I was an older student going back to grad school. But all in all, I'm glad I did go through the program. I finished because I was looking at it. The goal wasn't just for me, it was also the change that I can make. So I don't look at me as like, oh, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this to help improve our nation. And I look at us as being interconnected. So me getting a degree as a minority Black woman will help another young lady who may have not have thought she could be there get that degree. Because I didn't even know about pursuing a PhD until I went to college, where now the program, people know about it like way earlier. So that's why I decided just to go through it. And yeah, and I'm here today, so yeah.
Oh, so I've definitely wrestled with this question because growing up, I had this mentality that with a PWI, a predominantly white institution, oh, they got the better resources, they got the better money, I want that. And it's not to throw shade at HBCUs or historically Black colleges or universities. It was just, that was the mentality that I was raised with. It was, they have the greener grass, go there if you can go there. And so I did. I went to a PWI for undergraduate. And luckily for me, I went to a large enough university where I could find my clique, my community of Black people, as well as Asian American people within such a large institution. And so even when I did have moments where I had self-doubt or felt very isolated in some of my classes, because I was usually the one Black person in my linguistics courses, and even when I was still a chemistry major, I was usually the one Black person in my chemistry courses. I could get outside of that and still find community at that institution. Now, when it comes to graduate school, my master's program is actually an HSI, so it's a Hispanic serving institution. And my experience there was actually such a positive one because one, the diversity is just everywhere. It was one of those few instances where I heard Spanish more than English, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like maybe I'll pick up some Spanish while I'm here. But I think what was the most important part of that experience was realizing that resources and support isn't less at an HSI or an HBCU. I can't say specifically at HBCUs because I never attended one, but the resources and support that I had at that school for my master's was actually amazing. And if it wasn't for that support and the resources that were there, I wouldn't have been able to go to NYU to do my PhD. So, I think some of the labels are important when it comes to thinking about who you are as a person and what you need to be a healthy and happy person, because grad school can be rough, but it doesn't have to be if you have the right support system at play and you know yourself well enough to know this is what I need to be a healthy and happy person to get through that. But my ultimate decision to go to NYU was actually specifically resource specific. So I knew I wanted to do neurolinguistics, I knew that I wanted to learn how to do neurolinguistics with a very specific technique. And that technique is only available at a handful of schools across the across the United States. And so it was kind of like a, a Hail Mary pass, a go big, go home kind of situation where if this is really what I want to do, then I was going to go where the best resources and the best support for me were going to be there. So I looked at all the schools that had that technique. I looked at the faculty who use that technique and what kind of students they had and what kind of research and support they offered. And, I narrowed it down to 2 schools and I applied to those 2 schools. I got into my top choice. I went there, I had an amazing experience, and I got exactly what I wanted to get out of it, even if it meant having to find certain aspects of like community and support outside of the university or outside of my department. So I was, just like at Georgia, when I was at a PWI and had to find my like Black cohort at UGA, I actually was helping reinstate Black community at NYU. So we had this thing called Black academics. And so it was all of us who were Black, who identify as Black, and were also graduate students between masters and PhDs at NYU. We were all able to get together and have happy hours and also just picnics in Washington Square Park and just do things to support each other through that process. Because even though we were all studying different things, we were all facing struggles with, what does it mean to have an advisor who doesn't look like us or talk like us? Or what do we do when we have, conflict with our other cohort mates, so other people who are going through the same program as us, if there are disagreements. And sometimes you just want to be able to let your hair down and talk freely. I think, Gisela, you're bringing this up. Sometimes I just want to talk how I grew up speaking. I don't want to have to like put on a particular voice and talk with a particular jargon all day, every day, because being a linguist can be very exhausting with all the terminology and jargon that we have in a very insular field. So I think all of those things are important. And so whether it comes to PWI, HBCU, HSI, it's all with respect to like what you want to get out of your experience and what you intend to do while you're in graduate school.
All right. Well, for the sake of time, I think we're going to have to wrap this up, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of you being willing to share your time and experiences with us. And yes, so if everyone could just give a virtual round of applause for our speakers, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Sarah, Gisela, Maria, and Shay, for so much. This was amazing. It will be in Portuguese if you guys prefer to speak in Portuguese during this part of the event. So feel free. And also, when we give the awards, if the scholars want to make comments, you can choose comments in Portuguese for this part of the event. And then we will have an interpreter translating. So if you would like to change your language when we switch to Portuguese, you can also switch interpretation switch. So with that, I'll let Pedro and Ronan start with our honorable mentions. And then we will have Raquel announcing the winner of our pitch competition.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. Going to switch to Portuguese. Olá, pessoal, boa noite, tudo bem? Gostaria de cumprimentar a todos e dar os parabéns a todos os scholars dessa rodada do Bridges. Parabenizá-los pelos pitches, foram muito interessantes, muito diretos. Eu achei super interessante todas as iniciativas. Meu nome é Pedro Massaguer, eu faço parte do comitê científico da Dimension Science. Isso já faz desde 2019. Eu apoio o board científico, principalmente nos processos de seleção e avaliação dos candidatos. Então, eu conheço vocês desde o início e acabei interagindo com todos os ad hocs durante o processo de avaliação. A gente foi levado a refletir um pouco por que participa da Dimension Science, né? E todas as iniciativas comentadas eu achei extremamente interessantes. Desde o início, quando a Marcia apresentou a proposta da Dimensions, eu achei muito relevante a ideia o apoio à ciência, o apoio ao pesquisador, sobre uma ótica diferenciada, não apenas do âmbito mercadológico ou do âmbito científico, mas sim como a ciência como uma ferramenta de transformação social. Então, isso que me aproximou principalmente da Dimensions. Eu fiz o meu programa de mestrado e doutorado num programa de política científica e tecnológica na Unicamp. Eu trabalhei com o tema da avaliação em ciência e tecnologia, avaliação de impactos de projetos de inovação. E hoje eu sou um CEO, um dos cofundadores da 3D Biotechnology Solutions, que é uma startup que eu cheguei a apresentar para os scholars, trabalha no campo da engenharia tecidual. Eu acho que o principal ponto de recomendação da Dimensions é o grupo que compõe essa organização, que são pesquisadores, são professores, são colaboradores nos Estados Unidos, as mais diferentes áreas, mas que têm essa sinergia, essa visão de que existe a necessidade da ciência ampliar o seu papel nas comunidades subrepresentadas, nos grupos subrepresentados. Então, esse é um segundo pilar, essa sinergia de por que participar e recomendar a Dimension Science. E sendo assim, eu vou, então, já para a finalização, comentar e passar a menção honrosa para Sheila da Silva e para o Gabriel Santos, destacando o engajamento no programa e a participação em todos os momentos do programa e todo esse entusiasmo nessa interação. Então, mais uma vez, parabéns pelo evento, parabéns aos bolsistas, e eu passo a palavra para o meu colega, para o Ronan. Uma boa noite a todos.
Boa noite, pessoal. Hello, everyone. I will speak in Portuguese also. Pessoal, boa noite. Eu não tenho tido a possibilidade de acompanhar os encontros que houveram, né, ao longo desses 3 meses, por conta das minhas aulas que coincidiram com o horário. Mas, assim, eu estou muito feliz de ter visto, pelo menos parte do grupo, né, o avanço, o desenvolvimento. Eu sou professor na Universidade Federal da Bahia, em Salvador. Fui recentemente selecionado, né, pelo Pedro, pela Marcia, pelo Márcio e pela Emiliana, para poder compor, né, para poder somar ao grupo do Comitê Científico. E, para mim, tem sido uma experiência muito positiva, extremamente, não só pelas pessoas que eu citei aqui, mas também pelo propósito que a Dimension Science tem, né? Esse propósito de trazer equidade e diversidade na ciência, promover isso. Por que isso me cativa? Porque eu sou um exemplo disso. Eu venho de uma família extremamente pobre, passei muitas dificuldades na minha vida, e eu sou o que o pessoal chama de low income, né? Eu não tinha dinheiro nem para pegar ônibus, para vocês terem uma ideia. Então, eu me identifico muito com essa questão social, porque acho que nós temos muitos talentos, não só na minha classe, mas também nas diversas classes que são subrepresentadas, e isso é o meu motor de trabalho, de contribuição, né? O pouco que eu tenho feito até aqui tem sido muito prazeroso, né? Conhecer toda essa estrutura, todo esse propósito, toda essa missão, né? Então, mais uma vez, eu quero agradecer a Dimensions pela oportunidade de contribuir, e também gostaria de fazer a menção de mais 2 nomes, né, como menções honrosas, pela participação, pela exemplar, né, a gente tem acompanhado, é uma participação praticamente 100% de frequência, e isso me deixa muito feliz, embora vários outros também tivessem participado e tenham querido estar presente, mas infelizmente as dificuldades acontecem. E eu queria trazer, né, essa menção honrosa para a Joelma e também para o Gibran. Tá? Parabéns para vocês. São 4 scholars que realmente se destacaram nesse percurso, né? E de minha parte, tenham o meu respeito, o meu abraço e meus parabéns, tá? Muito obrigado, eu passo aí para...
Obrigada, Pedro e Ronan, por participarem, por serem tão ativos, tanto o Pedro como, né, a parte ativa do processo de seleção do programa, mas também o Ronan no background, ajudando a gente com tudo que a gente precisava. Então, obrigada vocês por participarem desse programa. E congratulations novamente para Gibran, Joelma, Sheila e Gabriel. Cadê vocês? Vocês estão aí, vocês 4? As menções honrosas.
Eu gostaria de agradecer a vocês pela menção. Muito obrigada. O programa foi fundamental na minha vida nesse momento. Estou finalizando o doutorado, então veio assim num momento exato para eu poder me destacar mais e conseguir compreender melhor o mundo acadêmico, né? E um pouco fora da academia também, que vocês dão essa visão bem ampla. Então, fico muito feliz. Muito obrigada, gente.
Gabriel, Gibran, Joelma. Então, esses 4, eu quero falar um pouquinho. Essas 4 pessoas que vocês estão vendo, a gente pediu, eu quero dar um pouquinho do background, a gente pediu pelo menos 75% de presença em todas as nossas atividades. Isso foi um pedido por todos os nossos scholars e guests. E esses indivíduos, eles têm um tamanho engajamento e comprometimento com o programa que não importa o que aconteceu na vida pessoal deles, eles estavam lá em todas, 100% das sessões. Então, parabéns pelo comprometimento, engajamento de vocês, e parabéns para todos que completaram o programa, mas vocês foram, como se diz aqui, né, above and beyond. Então, obrigada novamente, espero que vocês tenham aprendido com o programa, tanto que o que eu aprendi de vocês. Então, agradeço novamente. Se isso fosse ao vivo, a gente agora estaria batendo palma.
Bom, eu queria só falar um pouquinho que eu agradeço muito a oportunidade também de estar fazendo parte desse time, de ter presenciado todos esses eventos, e eu acho que eu queria também adicionar um parabéns aí para quem agiliza tudo isso, né? Para quem faz isso acontecer. Então, Márcia, muito obrigado por fazer tudo isso acontecer. Ronan também, Pedro, eu estendo a menção honrosa a vocês, viu? Agradeço demais.
Valeu, Gabriel. Então, agora eu vou agradecer a vocês e eu gostaria de, então, a última parte do nosso evento, agora é anunciar o vencedor ou vencedora da competição de pitches. Eu vou chamar a Raquel Fleck, a gente vai voltar para o inglês agora e fechar o programa em inglês. Rachel?
Yes, hi everyone. Well, congratulations. You guys made it. All scholars did a great job with their speeches, and I want to congratulate the winner now. So drum roll, please. And the winner of this challenge is Eliana Monteiro, PhD. She is from São Paulo, Brazil. Her areas of research are biochemistry, cell biology, diagnostics, epidemiology, immunology, infectious diseases, molecular biology, and population biology. Good job. Awesome. And we see, hello. All right. Eliana, we have a question for you in a few words, and you can answer in Portuguese, okay? What would you say to younger scientists looking to get into sciences today?
Eu acho que eu sou a maior incentivadora, inclusive dos meus familiares, dos meus sobrinhos que já estão ali na faixa dos 17 a 20 anos, né? Tem, inclusive, uma sobrinha minha que falou, eu vou fazer biomedicina porque ela vê a pesquisa, né? Ela vê os meus trabalhos e ela acompanha e ela se interessa muito. Mas, assim, para muitas pessoas, eu falo também, até colegas de trabalho, não é uma carreira fácil, tem que querer muito, tem que ter persistência, tem que gostar do que faz e tem que se desdobrar bastante, porque pela minha história não foi fácil, não está sendo fácil e creio que não vai ter molezinha também daqui para frente, né? Mas eu conciliei a pós-graduação com o trabalho, porque eu, no momento, né, no passado, não tinha como eu depender exclusivamente da bolsa. E aí, quando eu não tive mais esse aporte, foi quando eu vi a oportunidade da Dimension Sciences. E eu até falei no meu relato, né, no vídeo que eu gravei, que foi muito mais do que eu esperava, porque a gente vê os programas que oferecem a bolsa, né? A gente recebe a bolsa, faz o projeto, entrega o resultado e acabou ali. E a Dimension Sciences abriu a minha visão em todos os sentidos, assim, e foi a partir daí, foi a partir de setembro, outubro, que eu comecei a procurar atividades fora da minha área de trabalho. Estou me desdobrando bastante, mas para aprender, para tentar ir para outros laboratórios e sair da minha zona de conforto total, né? Agradeço muito a oportunidade, Marcia, todos vocês.
Obrigada, Eliana. E mais uma vez, parabéns. Parabéns a todos os scholars também. E eu vou deixar a Marcia fechar para nós.
Obrigada, Raquel. E Eliana, obrigada, Eliana. I will say goodbye to you guys. But it was great. I will miss you now every week from now on, because for the past 12 weeks, I was meeting you on a weekly basis. So it will be very different, but it was an amazing time, and I'm looking forward next year. And as our one thing perspective I want to give to you is like this is the 3rd edition of the Dimension Science Bridge OR, and then our scholars from other years, they continue engaged with Dimension Science. So I'm hoping you guys will continue engaged as speakers, as volunteers, following us at social media. So you now are part of the Dimension Science family. So don't go too far, stay connected. And with that, we will close the event. Raquel, do you want to say a few words about final words in name of the Dimension Science Board of Directors?
Yes, well, thank you so much. This is actually my first time being part of one of the meetings with Bridges. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed listening to all of you. I enjoyed listening to the panelists. But